I call the street committee meeting to order. Can you do the pledge? Pledge first. Go ahead, Tim.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, can you do roll?
You ready for roll?
Ready for roll.
Walter,
Here.
Carter,
Barely here.
Hagan,
Here.
All right. Well, we've got a couple different things on the agenda, and I know we don't have much time, or we have 40 minutes, basically. So let's start right in with the 2017 ramp.
All right, with the ramp, what you see in front of you, the first page there is the recommendation letter from Jobs and Henderson. We received two bids, one from the Shelley Company and one from Decker. The engineer's estimate was $605,000, so both bids are awardable, with Shelley Company being the low at about $6,000 under the engineer's estimate. I believe the recommendation is to award the contract to the Shelley Company. The Shelley Company has done the paving here for the past couple of years, and from experience last year, they did a really good job.
What I will say is what you can expect on May 15th, a week from today, is legislation seeking authorization to execute the contract for the 2017 road program. And I will be recommending council approve that so we can get it moving forward.
Do you need any kind of recommendation from us?
That'd be great.
Okay. Did it change at all from your what's called here the City of Pataskala 2017 paving project, overall project map? Did anything change from that? This is one you handed out probably March, during our March meeting.
No, only minor details have changed.
Yeah. Same roads.
All same
Yeah.
roads.
No roads have been dropped. No roads have been added. Same plan moving forward.
Did we not add something? The culvert on Taylor.
That's not part of the ramp.
Yeah.
That's totally separate.
You guys
project.
pulled that out separate. Can I ask where the funds came from?
For the culvert on Taylor, that's part of the supplemental that just went for the second reading. We added it to that with a $50,000 placeholder. We actually did get a proposal back today from Jaw Excavating, I believe, which does not include running a detour. We'd probably do that in-house. They wanted about $30,000 to complete the work, which is right about where I'd expect it to be.
Funds are coming from the street fund, though.
That's what I remembered. I just wasn't sure if you, since it came from the street fund.
Street fund.
Replace it with corrugated pipe again?
We were going to go to plastic, double wall plastic.
Good. Okay. All righty. Any other comments on the ramp?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend that the council, make a recommendation that this committee report to council that Shelley Company be awarded the 2017 ramp.
I'll second that motion.
All right. You want to take a roll?
Walter,
Yes?
Hagan,
Yes?
Carter,
Yes.
All right. Going on to the second item on the agenda, the Kyle Moore and Graham Road drainage alternative analysis. Alan, you want to give us any information on that?
Okay, a brief summary of this project. Basically, there's the Kylemore subdivision. Their storm outlet for part of the subdivision just goes to an existing wetland. There was no retention or detention installed as part of that. There probably should have been. Now there's a dispute between a neighbor that's in Kylemore and a neighbor that's on Graham Road where the water should go, and they're both affected by it. So I'd come up with a potential project to look to do something about that. This is an alternatives analysis proposal from Strand. The price they have in here is $11,600. And after the fee proposal, I also attached a review from Jobs Henderson. Jim Roberts commented on it. It doesn't appear to me that he had any major concerns other than we have a kickoff meeting and kind of play this close to the vest to make sure that they're proceeding in a manner as we believe to be correct, I guess.
Okay. Do you have, obviously, when when Colmore was put in. Did the city receive any drainage study, any calcs?
I believe that was put in when it was still a township.
So it's a township development.
It was at the beginning of the merger.
Okay.
But it was put into county specs.
Okay. Have we gone to the county at all to ask them, what the heck happened?
No, I have plans.
Because
that I-
they're the approving agency.
At that point,
At that point, they were.
Okay.
potentially.
I mean, I'm just asking the question. They should have some, at least some answers for us that maybe Strand could use and maybe knock this price down a little bit.
We'll have to look if it was right at the time, it could have been transferring over to the city at that point where the county engineer would not have been reviewing those plans.
Okay. Well, again, this is just I'm
Worth-
just asking a
worth
question.
asking.
I don't know.
No,
I
worth
thought maybe
asking.
we did it, but
Worth asking.
I did talk to Licking County Soil and Water, and they were not able to find any information on it. Sorry, I was thinking of Licking County Engineer. I've not talked to him, but I did talk to Soil and Water, and they couldn't find any information.
what's his face over there? Tim, the inspector. I'm trying to think of the guy's name real quick. I'll think of him in a second. He'll know if they had any inspection on it. He'll know. I'll give you his name. I'll look it up. Okay, so the proposal that you have from Strand, I'm just reading through their scope. Anything on here that you disagree with as far as their scope?
No, I think they've summarized the project fairly well, and I think their study tasks are more or less in congruence with what we need.
So if the city didn't sign off on these plans and we annexed or we merged with the township, this is our problem? Is that what your assessment is?
Yes, I want to say that we actually did sign off on the plans. The city did sign the plans, if I remember correctly. I haven't looked at them in
Okay.
a few weeks, but I think that the city did sign them.
What kind of time frame are you thinking on this project?
We have in this year's budget for the alternatives analysis and design, and then I had a placeholder for it in the 2018 budget for construction.
I'm sorry, Mr. Haynes, can you say that again?
2018.
2018? Thank you.
Go ahead. Go right ahead.
So if I could rewrap my head around exactly what's going on here. You've got water that the city possibly signed off on, but the county certainly signed off on, entering into a pond that's privately owned.
Yeah, effectively, the water goes into a wetland that was already there. The wetland is more or less increased because of this additional stormwater. And then it outlets into a pond on private property. And then that owner has an overflow piped into the ditch at the road. And part of the problem here is the one neighbor that was initially there on Graham Road before the subdivision had his pond, didn't have any problems. Now it gets a bunch of muck and such from the wetland, and he has been restricting the flow coming to that, so that the neighbor in Kyle Moore, his property is flooded a good amount of the time, yeah. Beyond what the initial wetland was, right. And
Well, go ahead.
I'll say there's plenty of other stormwater projects, and I listed them out on a 5-year CIP. This is the one that I guess I had heard about first, so I'd put it at the top of my list.
I do remember cursorily hearing, but only in as much as we were going to get this from Stantec. I don't know that I quite had it by the throat yet, that when exactly what the plan was going to be.
Strand and not Stanton.
So I'm sorry, Strand.
To be clear.
Can I ask you, Alan, you said it's the first one you heard about, but not the only one. Is there any others that are in worse condition than this one?
Worse condition. Well, we've got a Foundation Park over through Broadview Crossing. There's a tile that runs through there, runs across backyards. Currently, I guess there's a blowhole I just found out about last week that's actually on park property. We're going to look to see if we can do something about that one. But the rest of it runs across properties. I guess there's some blowholes on the properties. It's not public infrastructure. We don't have easements, so I don't feel like we can just go in there and do something to it legally. So that's one of the ones that's on the list. One that Andy has a study for over there, which is the Halloon Lane drainage. That one is a pretty major problem, but
Yeah, it's one of
also all the alternatives on that one are very costly. So those ones are a little more expensive. I did put that one out a little bit further. I wish I would have brought my my spreadsheet with me that shows what else is on there. I know there's at least one, if not two others, that I know of specifically.
And looking,
Been going on for some time though, right?
Yeah, and we have, and I'll be honest, we have a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, we have several major drainage issues that, we're going to be talking about one here coming up next on the agenda.
Awesome.
And these are things that we have, with Kyle Moore, I'll say that the city has inherited with this one. Had it been, I think if it was built today, we wouldn't be dealing with these problems at all. But it doesn't mean the problems don't exist. So
Right,
we
right.
certainly have to figure these out. They are costly to fix.
Yeah, and some of our issues are, we're the cusp between the Scioto watershed and the Licking and Muskingum watershed runs right up along Summit Road. So it's a high plain that's pretty flat and just doesn't drain well. So there's a bunch of wetlands. Some of the places you wonder if things really should have been built there, but they are. So now they're ours.
Now
to
they're
deal with,
ours.
I guess.
Without substantial drainage taking place.
Correct.
Right.
You can build them as long as you drain the area.
Correct.
And then the other side of is similar to Foundation Park. It's just old farm field tiles that were put in. They created a subdivision, didn't know they were there, maybe never encountered them, and now they're on private property and they drain some significant areas.
I guess part of my worry about this was when I look at Mr. Roberts, it's just full of cautionary stuff. It's just makes me feel like nothing that's recommended. Like, I guess it can easily spin out of control is the narrative that I think he's talking about there. And I don't know that means we shouldn't do it, but
And I'll give you a little bit more history. We'd initially had Strand submit an engineering design proposal. That was quite a bit higher than I thought it was going to be, and honestly, that was probably a mistake on my part. I should have had them do an alternatives analysis first. So then, seeing that cost, I was like, okay, let's dial this back, do this first like we should have, and the numbers may be a little bit higher than what I was hoping it was going to be, but I don't know that I can say that it's out of line either.
You think this is a couple $100,000 to fix this problem?
I threw a number of 300,000 at it. I don't think it will take quite that much.
Does that
but I
include
think
engineering?
What's that?
300,000 includes engineering?
Yeah,
Yeah,
including engineering, it'll
I'd say
probably
you're probably right.
be close to that, right?
Too bad we don't have a storms committee.
Well,
Or utility.
or stormwater utility.
or stormwater utility.
I think what this step does, though, is gets us to identify what needs to be done to fix this.
One of the worries that I have just reading this, then I read it quickly, and it could be in here already, but you've got a wetland involved here, and you're going to direct drainage away from that wetland and potentially dry it up. I mean, are they taking environmental situations? They have to feed wetlands, and it's been there 25 years, so it's established. It's not going to go away. I mean, I'm wondering about detention, because 25 years ago, the detention and water quality requirements were totally different. Are we not getting ourselves into some big issues with an existing lack of drainage system?
And I was looking back through the proposal here, because I think that is one of the things that we were going to look at as part of the alternatives analysis. I know they mention it in the understanding of the solution, which is right above the project approach. They mentioned the wetland a couple times, so it's known that it's a wetland. Part of their original, when they were submitting for design, they had a lot of money in there for the unknowns of what we would need to do. Were there permitting required for the wetland and such? I guess I'm hoping that we can more or less use the existing pond that's there, put a structure in to control the release rate and kind of pipe between the Mr. Fife and the neighbor's property, but it
But
might
you're
not
gonna
be
need,
that
you're gonna
simple.
need freeboard to put a structure in, and you don't have that.
That,
I mean, I'm just seeing us get into some,
If you look, if I can real quick, page 3,
okay,
up at the top,
uh-huh.
about the understanding, it does address the wetland.
and there is a, in the
Church
study
from-
tasks,
Potential to detain some portion of the flows from the tributary area in the wetland.
What I guess I'm saying is it's not a potential, it's a must. You have to feed the wetlands. That's why they typically have a high and low storm drainage system. The high one feeds the wetland, the low one takes the water and puts it in a detention where it then releases. So that's, I mean, that's really the only system that I could think of that could work here. Okay, well, I'll leave it at that. So as long as they understand that, I think I would really want them to be very, very clear on that.
Yeah.
Because the city's gonna get even more problems.
I'm sure they understand that.
Well, I'd like to talk to the county and see what they were thinking when they approved this. Okay.
Sure Strand understands the wetlands, so.
yeah, there is a review potential permitting requirements of the alternatives, which may include document research and/or communication with regulatory agencies.
I guess
Study tasks.
I know, but when I'm reading this too, and I'm not seeing anything that says they're going to do calculations to feed the wetlands and maintain the wetlands. Yes, they would be permitting to get in there and disturb wetlands. There's going to be obviously NOIs for doing any dirt work. I want to make sure that they're studying.
Absolutely, and I think that would come into,
studying-
this is just the alternatives analysis, this is not the engineering.
Okay.
So that would come into play at the engineering point.
And I guess what I'm worried about is that as we move forward, I guess I don't want to be the ostrich, right? You just don't want to put your head in the sand and say, this isn't us, although I don't know why it's us. I still don't understand kind of exactly why. It seems to me like a property dispute between two individuals with a wetland.
And he's also accepting public drainage.
Exactly.
That's the way it makes it ours. And I assume they're looking at taking easements on top of these private ponds, so we
I
can
think we
maintain
would
them in
have
the
to do
future?
some sort of easements, right?
Okay,
It's
that's a mess.
a mess.
That is a
And we
mess.
have inherited it, but you're right, we're accepting public drainage in a subdivision that was not designed properly, does not have proper drainage installed in it. And now we are stuck with the issue to try to address it and fix it.
Pitted these
I
two
think the
neighbors against
same,
each other when they really
you know,
shouldn't have been.
if we're gonna talk concerns we have about wetlands, I think we also should address, you know, acknowledge the concerns about having public water draining, causing these problems that could potentially come back on us.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the gentleman's name. Okay, well,
So was this presented to us as just your plan or approval?
This certainly needs council approval at 11-6, and I would request that this committee, if they feel it is appropriate to do so, make a recommendation for council approval. And again, this would be on the agenda, council agenda for May 15th, a week from today, for approval.
you know what, I'm going to ask that you get clarifications from the county to see if they have any of their calcs for this subdivision. And then secondly, just to verify with them in the alternatives analysis that they're looking into some of these environmental concerns. You know, that we don't just get a report back that doesn't address that issue, because it's real easy to figure out where you can drain water and where you can store water. But this is complex because you have to feed these wetlands. So I just want to make sure that they have that in their mind, and I don't see it in that proposal.
When you say feed the wetlands, I'm not.
You have to maintain a certain amount of drainage to a wetland to make it survive, to have it survive.
Keep it wet.
Otherwise you're going to dry it up, it's going to be gone. It's the same thing as filling a
We can
destroying
check, I'm
wetland.
sure they,
They just don't have it in, it's a different calculation, that's all. Can you get those verifications, and then I would then bring it to council? Does the rest of the committee feel that way?
Well, I'm okay with that. I guess I'm still, what would we get from the county? And this is me being ignorant, so I apologize.
All we
I
would
do-
get from the county is whether or not they signed off on approving these plans. Or
And what-
calculations or anything that could be utilized with this.
Yeah, stormwater calcs will tell you how much water we're dealing with, where the tributary areas are coming from, how much off-site water they're transmitting through the subdivision to this area. Those are all big questions that, if we already know those answers, there's no reason to play Strand to figure that out.
My guess is we'll ask and they'll be able to answer that pretty quickly, but
Maybe.
it doesn't hurt to ask.
Wouldn't we still need Strand to do some kind of, I mean, obviously we know there's a problem, so regardless of the calculations, we would still need to come up with an
Yeah.
alternative.
Yeah, we have to come up with how we're gonna do this. And how much is it gonna cost?
Correct.
And I trust, Alan, that you've maintained the communication with the residents so they know that it's in front of us and they don't have to fight with one another.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll get them to stop fighting with one another, but I have communicated to both of them that what we're looking at and what our rough time frame is. Hopeful time frame.
we should have a copy of it. Maybe. The other thing
You're
too is to
right.
find out who the design engineer was originally on this.
That was Jobs and Henderson.
I thought you were gonna say that.
We have,
So we know somebody over there, right?
yeah, it was actually
think we
Mr.
might.
Roberts that stamped the plans.
So they may actually have some calculations.
I was trying to remember that as we were talking. I don't think they do. I don't remember.
If we can ask them, that'd be great. I'm just trying to save some money.
We will ask all around.
Ask everybody.
It's
I don't
fine
have any
enough. Let's save
calculations.
some.
I've looked through all my stuff already.
Trying to remember the developer's name. It's the same.
Well, if you don't,
I don't.
Well, yeah, the developer, I believe, went
come up with this.
bankrupt.
Okay.
But this is what we were talking about.
Of course.
Shocker.
He's bankrupt.
Okay, any other questions on that issue?
Nope.
Nope. All right, let's go on to the Legacy and Broad,
Summit Road drainage.
I'm sorry, Summit Road Drainage. I was getting ahead of myself.
Okay, so I've got a summary here, which I'll kind of rifle through. Along with this summary, there's a little map, a couple email correspondences, and a section from the ORC. So last year, mid-year, I got a call from a neighbor, a resident that said a neighbor was putting water onto her. Went out there, took a look. The water was going in her direction. I assessed that it was no more than what had been there previously. It may have changed at the rate, but that was more of a civil matter to be resolved between neighbors and not a city matter. I've had numerous conversations with that resident. Most recently, I contacted Mr. Zetz for an opinion from him. That opinion's included in here, and it was basically the same as mine, that's a civil matter and not a city matter. Since the conversation, initial couple of conversations with her, I've also been approached by the neighbor who has a fair amount of water issues. So I've had a couple of conversations with her, looked at what the potential options were. And then after that, two more neighbors just to the south had also contacted me about the drainage behind these houses. If you look on the map, I've got an oval there that kind of describes the area. This is west side of Summit Road, just across from it's middle school there, I believe, correct? And all of the issue is pretty much in their backyard. There is an existing tile that is not public infrastructure. There's no easement. It looks like it's just an old farm tile that runs across the one property. I show that in red on the map. There's some blowholes. It looks like it used to service this area. We don't know exactly where it comes from, but we do know where it goes, which is the existing catch basin about halfway between Summit and Klima. So where we were at on that, sorry, let me get caught up to where I'm at. There's a couple options that we could do for this if we wanted to do it. One option that is not available is there's drainage on the east side of Summit Road. There's not enough fall to get anything to that. The pipe would be out of the ground within 100, 200 feet. So that leaves an option of coming from the back ends and running a new line with an easement and making it city infrastructure along the property line on the property here I'd show in yellow. That's what I'm calling option A. That would be just running about 1,200 feet of pipe and putting a few catch basins in there. Couple issues with that, considerations. That might only affect one person. If we left it for the others to tie in and work amongst themselves to get something to happen. Good thing with that one is, we could probably do that one in-house. There's not a lot of design to do on that one, and the service department could install that pipe. Like I said, the negative is that it may not do a whole lot to actually solve the problem other than get drainage close. Option B would be running that 12-inch line plus running a couple 6-inch stubs to the north and the south, giving each resident a drainage point on their property. That would do a lot more to solve this drainage problem, but would also, that's a little bit more than I think we'd want to handle in-house. So we would probably need some engineering. We definitely need some survey and some legal descriptions because there'd be multiple easements, whereas on option A, we could probably get away with 1 to 2 easements. So some cost in there, and then the construction dealing with that many easements would be probably better handled by a contractor. Then option C is to do nothing. That, in this case, is with precedent and statute, it's typically we don't deal with water in backyards. These were houses that were built in a low-lying area. You could question whether they ever should have been built there, but they, of course, were. So like I said, I've had multiple conversations with several of the residents back there. Let them know that we would look into it. We've gone so far as to do some survey, and it appears from the survey that we could run some drainage to the back towards Kalima Drive. That also might be on private property, so there'd be more investigation to do. So I guess what I'm looking for here is a thought from the committee on if we want to proceed any further with this.
From what I'm hearing, you think option B is probably a better solution.
Yes.
Okay, but it would require a little more money,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, I haven't gone too far as to get into details of how much it would cost. I know it's a little bit more than, I'm sure it's more than what we could fit in the 2017 budget, and it's a little bit more work than I think we'd want to do in-house.
My concern is if we did option A, that would get us by, how long would that get us by?
Or even would it get us by?
Right,
'Cause
after
would they
all that
even
work.
work together to get tied
Not
in?
money well
It's
spent
not a very good
to
option.
do that.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say is, what the options we're looking, just for consideration, the options we're looking at here are certainly options the private residences could pay to do.
Through assessment.
Oh, well, I was thinking through. In their backyards, they could run their tiles and.
Unfortunately, with that missing tooth, if you have the missing tooth, then the next guy doesn't get it. I mean, he doesn't have any option.
I'm concerned that if we put that on them, that we would just end up with bigger problems in the future. Seems like that's what a lot of our problems stem from, is we had a little one and then things grew and then there was more people and then there's more water and then the problem comes. So, what I'm trying to avoid is us having, I would like to see us fix things in a manner that we're not fix them again in 10 years or more. Like, it's fixed to be resolved.
Yeah, if we were going to take an action, I think option B would definitely be the better of them. I guess the question is, should we take action on this? Typically, if it's drainage in a backyard,
We
we'd
don't.
stay away from that because it's not in the right-of-way, and nothing else in this area, none of the development there appears to have affected this. It's just a problem that was probably there before houses were ever built.
Gotcha. Are these neighbors feuding?
2 of them are, yes.
Yes.
Awesome.
How many people total, how many residents total do you think are affected by this drainage?
I have been contacted by 4 specifically, but I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, definitely 4, a 5th house that's currently vacant, and I think a 6th that there is somebody there that might also be affected.
So 6. And just running the numbers real quick, what do you think option B, cost-wise, any guess?
I really haven't.
Would you say it's probably 75,000?
By the time a contractor's doing it, I mean, we're
Easements.
probably going to have
Easements, contractor, survey, engineering, yes.
8 easements, yeah, a couple thousand apiece for those, for just kind of get them recorded. Engineering's probably another, 20, I'd guess, and then, yeah, potentially 40 to 60 for construction, so yeah, 7,500.
That's what I'm kind of at. 75 to 80 is what you're talking. Under option B. Is it worth going to the residents and seeing what their appetite is to say to them, guys, you've got potentially 6, maybe 7 people here that could benefit from this? City's a facilitator only.
Yes.
I mean, that to me sounds like the smartest thing to do.
For them to take it on?
Either way,
Yeah.
even if it went through the city, to them put something like I was thinking they could put a down payment, like we were talking about, or they could pay it all.
Yeah, I would want them to either pay it all or pay a portion of it up front, so we're not funding the entire cost. You know,
Right.
assessments are great over 10, 15, 20 years, but we've got to fund it up front, which again is putting stress on the budget.
Right.
When we look at this, does B only work if A is in?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
So the concept of B is that we would, let me ask this question, is the concept that we would do A and they would pay for, or somebody would pay for B? Or is the concept that if we're going to hire a contractor, we'll just pay them 75,000 and have them do that stretch?
Do it all.
all of it would be if we were going to hire.
So, I mean, I wonder, because I think we just had a situation that I think is kind of analogous to this, at least in the terms of a lack of planning in the past. And I know that we've had similar problems. I think Oak Meadow has kind of similar problems. You just mentioned an easement that doesn't belong to the city, or a pipe, International Drive. All these places are popping up. When do we say, either we've got to find a permanent funding stream to address that stuff, or we can't afford to go around and I realize that's an incredibly tough question, because when you're sitting there looking at the 4 people at a time, no matter how many times it happens to you, to say it's not on the city's property, we'd love to help you, but, and I realize that's unbelievably hard.
It
but-
is hard. One comment I want to make is that you're right. You could only do option B if you do option A, but I'd be hesitant only to do option A because we're fixing one person's problem at that point.
Well, I guess my question would be, if we went to those homeowners and we said, this is going to take a combination solution to the problem. The city is willing to do this, if you guys are willing to do.
Option A is dramatically cheaper. You could do option A and get the drainage piece there and essentially make them agree that they'd each put in drainage to connect to the next guy, to connect to the next guy, if the city's willing to put this piece in. I think that's a viable, you're probably talking $10,000 then to put for the city's portion.
And I don't,
Is a whole lot easier to swallow
yes.
on the resident side too, because their portion is probably $500. I mean, it's not terrible.
It'd be a lot cheaper for them to do it, and if they wanted to do it themselves, they wouldn't need to get necessarily easements from each other, whereas
Correct.
if we were putting the infrastructure in, we would need easements.
I guess that that would be kind of where I would want to see it go. It's not a perfect.
So we
Solution.
need to meet with the gentleman that has the field tile
Right.
and see how much he believes that this is helping him also. And then the last one is, obviously, Alan, you gotta look at that pond, see how close, that's challenging in itself. Okay. Anything else on this? We've got 7 minutes left.
You're saying the pond in the, yeah.
Jason,
Yeah.
to go by that, you could
I'll
get-
plan to meet with the residents and try to set something up there and see if we can, so basically I can offer that if we'll put in option A, run the trunk line, if they will basically sign some kind of agreement that they
I
will
wouldn't-
work with each other.
I would say that
I
there's a
wouldn't
lot of
offer,
op-
see what their appetite is for doing such a thing if the city were to offer.
Okay.
I would say if they
All
were,
hypothetical.
are you willing to put in this piece of pipe to connect to your neighbor to allow them to drain to the next person, and that it has to be unanimous across the board. Everybody's got to be in before the city will even evaluate that.
Yeah.
That's how I would feel about it.
Yeah.
Maybe we will set a precedent for dealing with these other ones also.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on that? All right. Legacy Estates now.
Okay, this one, the original question, the developer asked us if they could waive, if we would be willing to waive putting a turn lane on Watkins Road as part of the Legacy Estates development. We looked at that. It's actually the county's jurisdiction, so there's no way that we could waive that without annexing, and I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to waive it anyhow. During the research on this, I also found that they were supposed to have put a turn lane in on Blacks Road after construction of Phase 1, and that never happened. So basically, that is, the developer needs to put one on Blacks Road and needs to put one on Watkins Road as the way it currently stands. I came up with the idea that I've heard concern about there needing to be a light at Legacy Lane and Broad Street. Left turns can be a challenge out of there during peak times. And the fire station also has a concern. They've looked at what they can do to get a signal out there. If we did a signal, we could get preemption on there as well and have an advanced signal head to help control traffic during fire emergencies. So I threw out to the developer, I was like, well, we could look at the potential for putting a signal in there and waive the 2 turn lanes. So there's a lot to happen for that to happen. The first thing was the signal warrant analysis, and I'll come back to that one. And then there'd be coordination with the county for them to either waive the turn lane requirements or for us to annex to the center line and us to waive the requirements. And then finally amend the final development plan to reflect those changes, which I think that'd have to go through the Planning and Zoning Commission. So the current status on that is we did a signal warrant analysis. It does not meet warrants. So you don't have to meet warrants to put a signal in. We've got a couple in the city that are not warranted that are in. And per our code, basically the public service director can put one in. So if we want to do that, if there's support for it, we could still move forward with that. ODOT does not require anything from us on that. And then I just had a number of considerations for it. Like I'd already said, the left turn movements can be challenging. Fire department. I think more traffic would use that. I think motorists recognize that there's an issue there, so they go down to Blacks and Corliss instead of trying to make that left turn. The turn lanes in from Blacks and Watkins would certainly help the flow of traffic on Blacks and Watkins and help people get in. It doesn't do much for getting out. I think that's where the signal would come in. But the concern is without meeting warrants, the city could be liable for any thing that did happen if we went ahead and installed it. Like I said, we have other ones, but wanted to see, I guess, where we thought we were on that. If it's we should, being as it did not meet warrants, if it's we should just go back to requiring the 2 turn lanes.
How close was it, Alan? How close was it to meeting warrants?
I don't have an answer to that. I know it didn't meet any of them. I did not specifically ask how close it was.
Does the city not have a standing exception to firehouse, signals for a firehouse?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I mean, there's a little bit of that in there, right? I mean, this is the Catalina Club, right?
Yes.
And people coming down Broad Street, if the fire are getting ready to make a run, they'll push a button, it'll go red.
Right.
Clear the intersection for the fire department to come out. To me, that part kind of justifies that. I don't know if it.
Yeah.
I don't know when you talk about getting in trouble.
The lawyers will pick it apart.
Yeah,
Go
I've
ahead,
never
say
been
it.
a
You
part
can say it.
of that, so I don't know what the specific
You
pitfalls are.
mean if there's an accident,
Yes.
the lawyers will pick it apart?
There is a safety warrant as one of the warrants, but that is considering pedestrian traffic. The fire station is certainly not something that's considered by the signal warrant analysis specifically, so it's kind of an outstanding ordeal there.
And I don't know if I could also ask another question. He would be willing to do this because two turn lanes costs more than the signal,
Correct.
True.
but 1 turn lane doesn't. So telling him you need to keep the one on Blacks, but you can lose the one on Watkins, doesn't,
By the time we had a signal put into current standards and put a turn lane in, that would be more expensive for them, and I don't think they would want to do it. Correct.
do we have any feel for whether or not the county has any, have you talked to them enough to know if they're willing to waive that?
I've talked to Jared Nur, county engineer, a little bit. He was at least open to consideration. I haven't talked to him since we got the signal warrant analysis back. He was curious to know what the result of that was.
I have no,
And I don't think there's any action items at this point for the committee. It's kind of an FYI.
I guess I was
Where we are
looking
right now?
for maybe direction to see if we had a thought to whether we should proceed or just to go back to 2 turn lanes. And I could certainly work to get a little more information before we made that decision.
I think that'd be good. If we can get those from the county, answer those questions, and maybe get something out to council.
And how close they were on the warrants.
Okay.
That's probably an important piece to that, too. If they're so far away that we're really sticking our neck out to go ahead and put a signal in there, I think I would probably lean the other way to say 2 turn lanes and say we just can't do it. It's just the warrant doesn't allow us.
I would agree with that.
I've got 2 questions that I wanted to ask you outside of this. You had mentioned in your report last week, I didn't get that, or last meeting, about the issues on Main Street and the easement issues, and it looked like it was a right-of-way debacle.
Yes.
What is that being resolved, or how is that being resolved?
I wasn't prepared for that. Give me a second.
I understand. I didn't get to ask you this during council.
Yeah, the right-of-way was not resolved during design. So their plans, they did not go out and find property pins, is what my understanding. Stantec has said that they were not responsible for doing that. It wasn't in their agreement. I have not been able to track down that agreement to say yes or no whether they should have done that. Seems like because there were easements involved in this project, that it should have been.
Seems like when we were doing construction that'd be
Should've been.
step 1. Anyhow, so let's just add this to our list of Stantec issues.
Thank you.
Has been added, and it has
growing.
certainly skewed my opinion on where we should go with that. And
Well, it hasn't skewed mine. I certainly would like to make sure they're sorry that they did this terrible project. Okay, Taylor Road culvert, real quick on that one. I know you guys found a sinkhole. You found a hole on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And filled it. And I think you answered the question. You're replacing with plastic on that.
Yes.
Is there any other culverts, corrugated culverts, that we need to go out and look at, ASAP?
And I'd put in the report, item number 7 or 8. We're working on GIS. We're working
Yes.
on a method to get things into GIS. And as part of that, I'm going to create an inventory and analysis in-house so that we have a list of all the culverts and we have them on a regular maintenance schedule. That's not something that, if we have that, I'm not aware of it.
We don't.
Okay. All right. So that's
We do
being
not.
handled. And then lastly, I had Oak Meadow. You're looking at mid-May for designs that we can talk about?
They should be coming with a 30 to 50% set the middle of this month. So, yeah, I would guess in about 3 weeks or so we'd be ready.
Would that be
for another-
something that we can look at as a committee and kind of evaluate it to see that they're going in the right direction?
Yes, that is my intent.
Perfect. So that'll be our next, I would say we'll probably schedule street committee late May to see when those plans come in, you've digested them, have your questions answered, and then we get a copy so we can look at?
Yeah, late May, early June.
You want to go ahead and do it for the first meeting on
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and take, what date is that? Do you know offhand?
June 5th.
Okay, I'm here for that. Good.
And I don't, as of now, Kathy, I don't believe we have anything scheduled for June 5th.
Is that okay? Okay, go ahead, Mel. Is that okay with you? Tim?
Yeah.
You
Yes,
okay
sir.
with that?
I'll be here.
So why don't we do that?
Do that.
We'll just take we'll take our first swing at June.
6 o'clock. Do we need an hour, do you think?
I think we ought to go, let's go 5:45, because I don't think some of these items are gonna get resolved, and we probably will have repeat items again.
I think that's a good guess.
That's probably a good guess. All right.
We go ahead and schedule Kathy 5:45 to 7 for street committee.
Yeah. Tim, Mel, anything else?
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Roll, please.
Walter?
Yes?
Hicken?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Thank you for your patience, everybody. 4 minutes, staff. Ran over 4 minutes on you.
Let me know when you're ready, Kathy.
We're gonna lose a quorum at 7. Well, I'll put that on.
Wait a minute. Todd's here.
No, we don't have to.